Edgar Wright is one of my favorite directors. His films are incredibly inventive and fun. His scripts are tight, combining heart and humor. They're packed with witty dialogue and fast cuts. And he's known for placing great joke setups in the first half with hilarious payoffs in the second half. All of his films have amazing intros. The first 20 minutes of all of his films are fantastic. Whether it's Shaun of the Dead, where he doesn't even realize he's in the zombie apocalypse because his life is so repetitive, or Hot Fuzz, with the hilarious introduction where Martin Freeman and Steve Coogan send Simon Pegg to the countryside, or Baby Driver, where he really kicks it up a notch. And Last Night in Soho is one of my favorite intros of any movie ever. All of them prepare you for a lot of fun. I also find it really interesting to see how much his work has evolved. His early work had a lot of silly comedies, and his later works are much more Hollywood blockbuster movies. What I really liked about his early work was how much fun him, Simon Pegg, and Nick Frost seemed to be having. They would take a really funny premise, like, what if you didn't know you were in the zombie apocalypse? Or, what if the Village of the Year is secretly run by an evil cabal? And spinning a whole movie with that. And they would also have tons of humor and heart. While the movies were silly, the characters did experience real things that most people can relate to. The zombie apocalypse isn't exactly relatable. However, the fear that your life is becoming repetitive and that you're turning into a drone is. And similarly, with Hot Fuzz, the premise is absurd. What if a little English village is run by a cult? But the idea of, what if you've left the big city? What kind of challenges am I going to face? Am I going to have any friends? Am I going to be able to feel the challenges that I had in the city? That idea is very much relatable. And so while we're watching the detective solve the mystery, it's really funny and silly in the same way. And Edgar Wright is able to reference a lot of his film knowledge and parody action scenes and tropes. But there's also this character development where this big city cop is able to enjoy being in the countryside and enjoy the people he's around. And I think this is one of the problems with his middle films, Scott Pilgrim vs. the World and The World's End. Scott Pilgrim has a lot of humor and it's really inventive and creative, and I think it helped to inspire other video game-esque movies like Ready Player One. So I really liked a lot of the camera work. However, I didn't find the character development as rewarding as his earlier work, so I don't find it as rewatchable as those first two films. Similarly, with World's End, it felt disappointing because it was a reunion with Simon Pegg and Nick Frost, but it also felt like they ran out of ideas. I think the premise could have been interesting. It's basically Stepford Wives, but with English pubs, and I thought there was going to be a commentary on how large pub chains are ruining the character of small towns, but the film doesn't explore that. It also focuses on being a getting the boys back together film, which is meta because it is getting the same group of actors back together. But it didn't really feel like they had anything new to say, and it didn't feel like they figured out a path for these characters to develop, nor did it really make sense why these characters were really even getting back together anyway. I didn't necessarily love Scott Pilgrim. There are aspects of it that I really liked and really enjoyed, and I really liked that he was trying something new. Going back to World's End kind of felt like he was playing it safe, and I think it's the worst of his movies. So that's why I was extremely excited for Baby Driver. This was a movie that was very different than his previous films, but it played to a ton of his strengths. He's so detail-oriented. If you look at the first 20 minutes of this film, he's able to time and choreograph his characters to the music. He's able to fully utilize his favorite songs into this movie. He creates new and exciting chase scenes. He also has a great premise with this movie. A character who loves music but has tinnitus. And visually, this movie is a huge step up from all of his previous films. It's also a change from comedy and parodies to something more earnest. And I think that's where some of the difficulty of this film came from. He lost some of the tightness and script that the first two films had. And I think he lost where exactly this movie was going and got tied up in the more visual aspects of the film, rather than the script aspects. The problem with Baby Driver is that the second half of the film wants you to believe that everything fits together perfectly, but it doesn't fit together at all. For example, Jon Hamm's character Buddy blames Baby for the death of his girlfriend Darling. However, this is completely ridiculous because Darling, during the middle of a gunfight, jumps out from cover and blasts away at the wall of police officers. And then she's somehow surprised that she's shot back. It's just absurd that Buddy blames Baby for her death, and then he continues to rage at him for the rest of the movie. And then the script gets even worse with Doc deciding to help Baby. This is a man who's had no problem with threatening to kill Baby for the last several years if he doesn't drive for him. And now we're supposed to believe that not only is Doc willing to help him for nothing in return, but that Doc is willing to get killed for Baby? Because of what? Love? It's just a ridiculous decision that isn't backed up with anything previously in the movie. And then finally, the climax is just so over the top ridiculous. Buddy's supposed to somehow jump out of the car and Baby doesn't notice the open door, or that the car isn't reacting differently because no one's driving it. It's just beyond absurd. The end of Hot Fuzz parodies loads of over-the-top action movies. However, the end of Baby Driver just becomes a parody of itself. Edgar Wright followed up Baby Driver with Last Night in Soho, and I think it's one of the best looking films I've seen. Stylistically, this movie is beautiful. It's going to make you want to visit London in the 60s. The character of Eloise definitely has a better arc than Baby. However, the film still suffers some of the second half problems that plague Baby Driver, particularly the film not quite knowing what it wants to say. I feel like in many ways, this film wants to be a feminist film about the dangers of men and about the ongoing sexism issues that were rampant in the 60s and still going on now. That's a great theme, but the film doesn't really answer whether Sandy is a villain or a hero, and I think that matters as to what the actual message of the film is. Was she justified in killing all those men or not? Instead, she just attacks Eloise, so clearly she's bad now. I think it would have been a bolder choice if Eloise figured out that Sandy was the killer, and then Eloise made a decision on whether or not to let Sandy go. I think the film kind of got carried away stylistically with what was going on, which is really, really cool. The amount of detail that goes into recreating 60s Soho is incredible. But I think the psychological horror of the film weakens in the second half, and it's not quite as scary. It becomes quite obvious what is going to happen, so it doesn't feel as tense. It's also not aided by the weird CGI ghouls who get shown a lot, especially during the second half. And because they're shown so much, they aren't really something to be taken seriously. I think the ending works alright for Eloise's character, but not so much for Sandy. Again, I can't really overemphasize how beautiful the first half of the movie looks. I've honestly watched it multiple times and just stopped halfway through because that was the part I really enjoyed. I'm really excited to see what Edgar Wright does next, because cinematically, his recent films look so much better than his early work. So if he's able to combine his visually stunning films with the really tight storytelling of his early work, then I think he's going to create some amazing classics, and I'm really excited to see what he does next.